Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we'll be painting this lovely field of orange flowers. I'll be demonstrating on how to achieve this type of florals that has these soft blends, how to create depth, and also increase contrast in your painting. At the end of this tutorial, I'll share with you what are the common mistakes that could happen when painting floral landscapes, how to avoid them, and some tips on how to improve and bring your painting to the next level. So be sure to stay until the end of this tutorial. Let's first talk about materials. Since this type of painting requires a large wash, I would recommend getting a good watercolor paper, one that is 100% cotton and cold pressed. For brushes, we will need a large flat brush for laying out our first wash. And then here we have two sizes of mop brush, and then a synthetic brush for the details, and finally a liner brush for creating fine lines. Now let's do a color swatch of the paints that I'll be using. First, here I have cadmium yellow orange and with a mix of yellow. And then I'll add in some Sennelier orange to give it more contrast for the flowers. For the greens, I chose green umber, and to vary it a bit, I'm going to add in some set green as well. For the skies, let's use light turquoise. So all these materials will be listed in the description below. So the color palette for this piece contains both warm and cool colors. We have the warm colors from the orange, yellow flowers, and then the cool colors from the skies and the green fields. As mixing both warm and cool colors will result in muddy paints, I'm going to prepare 2 cups of water to separate between washing off the cool and warm colors. For the first layer, I'm going to use the wet on wet technique and apply our 3 main colors, which is the turquoise, the yellow orange, and the dark greens, all during the first wash. So I need to be quick while doing this when the paper is still wet. Before starting, I'm going to prepare a large amount of these colors first on my palette, and I recommend that you do the same as well. This will help to avoid the chance of my paints running out on the palette. Alright, so once the paints are ready, let's start painting. I'm using my flat brush to apply the colors of the turquoise for the skies, and then adding a bit more paints towards the top of the sky because I would like to have darker edges on the top, and then slowly bringing the colors downwards, and I'm going to paint it in the shape of a triangle. So I'm going to wash off some of the paints. Be sure to wash it off at the jar for cool colors. And then going back to the paper, let's keep pulling the paints down. And what I'm doing here is trying to lighten the colors as we go downwards. I'm going to keep washing off the paints off my brush until you get only water. And then keep pulling the waters downwards until we get to the bottom of the page. And then here my thought process is that I'm planning to have the focus point of our main flower in the center here. And then we have some flowers at the bottom. So it's good to plan out in your mind where you want to place your flowers and how you want to arrange the composition, because this will greatly affect the end result of the painting. I'll talk more about this at the end of the tutorial. So let's go ahead and lay down the paints for the flowers. And as you can see, because the previous layer is still wet, when applying the paints we get a little bit of blooms, and then we get these nice soft edges around. So this will be where the flowers are placed. And then for those smaller flowers which are close to the sky, here I'm grabbing a paper towel and then dabbing off some of the blues to create some white spots among the skies. And this will be where the smaller flowers are. And then keep going with applying the orange around the bottom. As you can see here, my paper has already started to dry. A trick here is that you can grab your flat brush and then re-wet those areas that are starting to dry. And then quickly proceed to apply your orange around the area. Let's add some splatters for the smaller flowers. Alright, so I think I'm done with laying out the orange. Now let's go in and fill in those gaps with greens for the grass. And I can see that some of those gaps have started to dry. Again, grabbing my flat brush, re-wetting those areas, and then applying in the darker greens. What I'm trying to achieve here is to get this really soft blend of colors blending out and spreading out into each other between the orange and greens. So not to worry if it doesn't look pretty. We are in the middle of this ugly stage. So just bear with me, we'll get through this. You can see here that this green blot that I've applied, the paper is completely dry and we have those hard edges showing. I'm going to again use the flat brush to just soften out the edges. I feel that the greens are not dark enough, so I'm going back in to darken them a little more. Right now we can see that the paper has started to dry out as the paints don't blend out as soft as it did earlier. So I'm going to stop here. Adding paints after this point will only produce more cauliflower marks. If it's your first time attempting to paint on a wet surface like this and did not achieve the results that you wanted, please be kind to yourself and not give up. Practice applying the first layer a few more times. Observe how wet the paper needs to be and how fast the paper dries. Different paper will act differently. And once you get familiar with this, you'll be able to control better and produce a better outcome. Remember, it's all about the process of making mistakes, practicing and repeating until you get better. Keep doing this and don't worry, I promise you the results will come. I'm going to add some water splatters to give more textures to this layer. And next I'll be changing on to a liner brush. I'm adding in these thin stems to give the illusions of stems which are further in the background. While doing this, have the thin lines stemming out from the green areas. Next step, let's start painting in the flowers. Using the same colors of cadmium orange and a little bit of yellow, I paint in the shape of the flowers and then apply a drop of Sennelier's orange right at the bottom center of the flower and then allow it to blend into the first color. This will give a nice range of the darker and lighter hues. Then carefully I draw out the main stems and some leaves. So this flower here will be my main focus point. As for the nearby flowers, I want to make them more blurry and less focused. So using a more diluted shade of cadmium orange, which is by adding a little bit more water to the mixture, paint in some smaller flowers around the main flower. Oh, and yes, before I forget, we need to make some scratches for the stems before the paper dries out completely. And here I'm using a metal ruler, or you may use the edge of your card or even your nails to make these scratches. It's similar to drawing out the stems like we did earlier, but we are scratching to give it a more interesting texture to the painting. Alright, let's continue painting our flowers. I'm moving on to my second focus point, which is at the bottom right. And I'll have this flower here, slightly bigger as well. If you're wondering why I have a second focus point, I'll explain this a little more, as well as the importance of having a good composition at the end of this tutorial. So do stay with me. Here I added in a touch of brown to vary the colors and make it a little more grounded. Repeat this and fill in flowers in the rest of the orange areas. While doing this, be sure to vary the flowers in terms of size and the shade and colors, which are cadmium orange, yellow, and browns. Doing this will help to create depth and distance. Once in a while, do step back, take a look at your painting as a whole. Try to create balance in the overall painting. For example, look out for areas which you think lack details, and also try to avoid overcrowding the flowers at one area. Here I'm adding in more orange splatters for more fun textures. Alright, once I'm done with the flowers, it's time to paint in the green stems. Those bigger flowers which are closer will have darker greens and bigger leaves. Flowers that are blurry and are further in the background, they will have lighter green stems with smaller, softer, blurry leaves. At this stage, the overall painting looks a little flat, and using a synthetic brush, I grab thick paint of Sennelier's orange and apply it directly on the bottom center of the flowers. This will help to further boost the contrast. I'm only applying it to my bigger flowers and those that I want more focus on. Leave out the rest of the flowers which are further in the background. Then top up with more thicker paint of splatters. Keep studying your painting and add on details as you feel necessary. If you have been painting along with me and have made it this far, guess what? Congrats! We have made past the ugly phase and slowly entering the final stage. The third layer of filling in the details is always more fun to work on because this is when your painting all comes together and starts to make sense. If you still feel that your painting looks flat, this is another tip you may try, which is by darkening the darker areas to increase more contrast. I feel that some of my greens, especially the areas at the bottom of the page and the corners, could use a little darker tone. So I'm using a flat brush. I gently re-wet the areas that I like to work on. When I say gently, it's because I do not wish to disturb the previous layer of paints. So try to be as gentle as you can and then dab in darker greens onto the areas. Pre-wetting it will help to make the edges blend in softer. For the last step, mix in some white gouache to bring back more highlights. At this stage, make sure that your paper is 100% completely dry. Otherwise, the white gouache will not sit on nicely on top. As you can see, some parts of my paper is still slightly moist, which is why the gouache that I applied disappeared into the paints. Also, another tip is to make the white gouache really nice and thick. Making it too watery wouldn't work as well. Splatter them around the darkest area for that nice contrast. I'm so glad that you made it until the end of this video. Thank you for watching, guys. And just want to share with you some thoughts on this painting. What are the common mistakes that could happen and what can you do to avoid them? And here's the painting that we have just done. And I want to show you that I've previously painted this twice. So in total, I painted it. This is my third time. And for comparison wise, I like to show you that composition is very important and planning before painting is also crucial. You can see here what the difference is that the flowers are all pretty similar in terms of their sizes. And what can be improved with this is to have some larger flowers and some really small ones to give that contrast. So if you compare with this and this, you can see here we have larger flowers and really small ones. So then we can have a very nice range of sizes as compared to this one. And also in terms of composition, placement of flowers is also something to keep in mind. So here we can see the main thing that caught my attention was this flower in the center. So we have a focus point here, and then my eyes will move around to this area here. This will be our second focus point. And then after that, the eyes will just go around here and then to the rest of the painting. So here we can see that there's a flow going around to guide the viewer's eye around. So this is something that you could do to create a more interesting composition. Whereas for this one, there's no really a focus point around. Everything is just scattered everywhere. So yeah, this can show you the importance of having a focus point and also planning out your composition. And for this third painting, we have some composition. We have around here, starting from here and then going around to this flower here, going down and then around to the left. But I would say among all three paintings, this would have the best composition. So yeah, every time I paint, it turns out different. So practice makes perfect. And the tip that I'd like to share with you is when applying the first layer, be intentional of where you like to place the yellows and the greens. For example, if we want to have a focus point here, so be intentional with where you put the yellows, have them a bigger yellow area here, and then we have greens at this smaller area, and then we have another big area of yellow here for the flowers. And then here, since we want to guide the viewer's eye around like that. And you can see in the third painting, I've changed the tone of the skies to turquoise because I like it better with this combination of colors instead of this. I've used here ultramarine blue. So it helps a lot by painting this a few times. And if your painting did not turn out well in the first round, I do encourage you to give it a go again and repeat this painting. And here I've learned to use a different hue using turquoise instead of ultramarine blue, and then making sure that I arrange my size of the flowers, and also making sure that the composition, that there will be a flow around the painting to guide the viewer's eyes. So that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next one.